All right. Things over there, sorry. Mayor Biss is not here.
Recording in progress.
But it being 5 o'clock, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the May 5th meeting of the Rules Committee. Can I get a roll call?
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Harris.
Present.
Councilmember Isles.
Here.
Councilmember Nusma.
Here.
Councilmember Burns. Councilmember Suffredin.
Here.
Councilmember Davis.
Here.
Councilmember Rogers.
Here.
Councilmember Harakaris. And Mayor Biss. Okay.
All right. Quorum being present, we can do our business. The first order is public comment. Is there anybody signed up for public comment? Paul Breslin, welcome. And Mayor Rosinski is next.
First of all, welcome to continuing and new council members. I have a few comments about rule changes. First thing that needs to be cleared up is the role of the mayor as a council member. Robert's Rules says that an ex officio member of council has the same rights as the other members, which presumably would include participating in debate and voting. But as presiding member, he, quote, does not enter into discussion of merits of pending questions, also Robert's Rules. These statements contradict each other, needs to be resolved. 2, I don't think the mayor should be allowed to change a 4-3 majority vote in council to a tie, thus defeating the motion. Robert's Rules does permit this, but I think that in a small deliberative body, it's bad policy. It's one thing to overturn a vote of, say, 50-49, but another thing to overturn a vote of 4-3. 2, the role of city manager and council vis-a-vis the mayor needs clarification. The city's website says that Evanston, quote, operates under the council/manager form of government. Yet that has not been true in practice. What I've observed during this current 3rd term of the mayor is a mayor-council form of government. The city manager has little interaction with the public and has no visible role in setting the priorities or decision-making. Either the form of government statement should be revised to reflect actual practice, or practice should conform to the existing statement. 3, public comment should be protected. Please reject attempts to limit public comment regarding both time limits and the quote-unquote prioritizing of comments. Whose priorities are these and who does the prioritizing? At every stage of the 3 iterations of EE45, residents have been given minimal time to review long, complex documents and minimal time to speak at meetings. That's unacceptable. We would like to see EE45 version 3 no later than this Friday, May 9th, to prepare for the May 21st meeting. Finally, a word about Land Use Commission qualifications. I urge council to confirm LUC nominees solely on the basis of their expertise and professional experience. All nominees should have strong credentials in development, architecture, or urban planning. Members of the LUC who carefully review proposals and offer thoughtful criticism should be valued, not dismissed. And yes, I'm thinking of George Halleck. It's not too late to reverse course and reappoint him. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Mayor Rosinski. Also, I'd like to add Councilmember Harakaris to the roll.
Hi. Thank you very much, and welcome all you new council members. This is exciting next 4 years. My comments were, I back up everything that was just said by Mr. Breslin, so I won't repeat anything along that line. As just a public member who often doesn't have time to read everything as clearly as, just 48 hours ahead of time, I think it would be nice and helpful for the public, and maybe you also, if when we're making rules changes like this, if there was a more comprehensive summary of what the changes are and what they mean, so that we know what to look for. I printed up both drafts. I just haven't had time to compare before tonight's meeting, other than just a cursory overview. One thing I did see was, I think the committees ought to have their right to choose their own chair. I think that the mayor puts forward someone, hopefully they're well qualified. And then the committees are well qualified to choose that. I think that there are a couple committees. I know our Parks and Rec Board, we choose our own chair, but I know there's other committees where the mayor has chosen. So I would go with, if you think they're qualified enough to be on the committee, give them credit enough to be able to choose their own chair. Third, I'd like to bring up the point about qualifications again. Like Mr. Breslin said, I think it's critical that everyone who's appointed to a committee that requires a specific expertise rather than just an interest, have the qualifications on their application that back that up. I specifically am talking to this case about the Land Use Commission because I know there's people who are interested in land use, but this is a very important committee. I mean, they deal with people's properties. Investors come in, or people who are building buildings, businesses. They have to have a wealth of information and consideration. And they also have to be willing to listen to the public. And I know sometimes it gets tiresome, but that's part of the job. And so I just ask that you reconsider, or if Mayor Biss, I would be saying this to him, reappointing at least Mr. Halleck for this position because he's already heard hundreds and hundreds of hours of testimony. He's been in this since the beginning. We're in the middle of a process, and it just feels like it's a disservice to the residents of Evanston to not have someone who is as well qualified as his. I mean, I sort of thought about it today, and I'm like, you wouldn't go to a podiatrist to have a cardiology consult. You go to the people who are going to give you the information you need to make your informed choices. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mary. Next up is Linda Damashek.
Good evening, Linda Damashek, and congratulations to the new council members. So I'm here, the Rules Committee, for a rule which I think should be on the books if it's not already. I haven't had a chance to look through the huge municipal code, but the Land Use Commission is getting a third draft of the comprehensive plan, and my belief is that any draft, new information, requires public input, requires public testimony. And so I believe that it should be created a new hearing and have public testimony on the new draft, and that is the absolute minimum of a democratic process that we should have going on here in Evanston. I'm asking for 14 days for the community to review the information because, as you may know, it's a 177-page document. And heretofore, we've been scrambling with 48 hours to review 177 pages. And I think that's not fair to the community. And if you want good quality public input, you should have commensurate advance time. So, information was given to staff on April 4th. So they've had, as of this week, they would have completed a month to review. And so I would like the Land Use Commission to have that draft available to the public to provide public testimony and be given 14 days notice. Okay, so in addition, related to the rules that you already have before you, the Land Use Commission. Also, it is imperative that people that are being nominated to the Land Use Commission absolutely have to have experience in the areas for which the Land Use Commission is reviewing items. So they need to have experience in real estate, development, architecture. So at a bare minimum, any nominee has to have experience in those areas. So for that reason, I encourage you to reappoint George Halleck, who has all those qualifications and has very ably demonstrated his ability to be very thoughtful and thorough in his examination of the documents so far and the the undertaking of the Land Use Commission.
Thanks, Linda. Or that's your 3 minutes.
Pardon me?
Your 3 minutes are up.
Oh, okay.
If you want to be real quick and wrap up.
Okay.
It didn't beat.
Thank you. And then just quickly, I don't think that the mayor should be able to triage or censor public comment.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Our next item is item M1, approval of the Rules Committee meeting minutes of April 14th, 2025. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of the minutes.
Is there a second? Second. All right. Alderman Eric Harris moves and Councilmember Harris seconds. Is there any discussion?
There is.
All right. Councilmember Newsma.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the first page of the minutes, the roll call from the April 14th is weird, and it lists us all as absent individually. So I think that needs to be corrected. Just
Okay.
probably computer system error.
We'll make a note of that correction. Are there any other corrections or discussion? All right. So with that correction in mind, let's vote it up.
Can you also add Mayor Biss to
And also add Mayor Biss to the roll.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
This is with the amendment. Aye.
Councilmember Isles.
Aye.
Councilmember Newsma.
All right.
Councilmember Suffredin.
Aye.
Mayor Biss.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Abstain.
Councilmember Rogers. Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
All right. On a vote of.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. Sorry.
7,
And
0,
six.
and 2 abstentions. The minutes of the April 14th, 2025 meeting are approved. Moving into items for consideration, we have committee assignments for the 82nd Evanston City Council. Councilmember Harris.
I think that, just to clarify, that was the motion to amend the minutes. We still have to.
Oh, we just said that we would. We've got.
Oh, okay.
We're going to change it, and we'll. Yeah.
Okay.
They're approved. Yeah.
All right. We're good on that, Alex? Okay. Appreciate the diligence. All right. So do I have a motion on item R1, committee assignments for the 82nd Evanston City Council?
So moved.
Is there-
Second.
All right. It's been moved by Councilmember Harris, seconded by Councilmember Newsma. All right. So why don't we get into this? Probably the best way to do it is if everyone follows along with the choices that have been made, and we can auction these off. Let's start with Administration Public Works, which I believe has 5 members, correct?
Yes.
It is the first choice of council members Newsma and Harris, and the second choice of council members Burns, Suffredin, Kelly, and Davis. Councilmember Burns is absent. Are there any of the other people who wish to be on that committee want to change their mind? If not, I think
Sure. I mean, we need to remove one person, correct? Is that what we're looking to? So I'm willing to step down from that.
okay. So then is everybody good with the Administration of Public Works Committee being Newsma, Harris, Burns, Suffredin, and Davis? Is there anybody who wants in or out? All right. So we don't need to vote on these individually, right? Okay. All right. So that handles that one. Planning and Development has 5 people who've made it their first choice. Then we are going to go with a 5-person Planning and Development Committee. Is that the plan? Councilmember Newsma, followed by Kelly.
I think Planning and Development in the previous city council had 7 members. 7 is excessive. I would like to move forward with 5.
Is there any discussion? I would like to congratulate council members Harris, Burns, Rogers, Kelly, and Davis for being the Planning and Development Committee. On the next one, Human Services, we have one council member who made that their first priority, and that's Councilmember Isles. Councilmember Harris has it as her second priority, and Harris and Burns have it as their third. We need 3, or do we need 5?
We need 5 total.
Okay. So does anybody want to be on Human Services that is not listed as being on Human Services. Well, we can't do 4.
Could I make a suggestion that we move forward, and if some people don't get their assignments they would like on other ones, they can horse trade back to this one?
Sounds good. I think it's a misuse of the term horse trade, but I understand what you're saying. The next is referrals, which has 3 members, including the mayor. So there's 1 vacancy. Harris, Nusma, and Rogers have it as a second priority, and Harris has it as a third. Do you guys want to sort it out amongst yourselves?
I will withdraw my name from referrals.
All right. It's now Nusma and Rogers.
I'll stay in. And
I mean, I prefer to stay in too, but if there's someone, who else is on the?
Or Mayor Biss?
I mean, I think of all the, well, of all the committees, I only know this one, but of all the committees, I think this is the one where kind of having some experience with the legislative process here is with the most utility. I just think that it's like very, very mechanical, but also like based on the kind of understanding of the workflow. So I think it's probably of the most utility for someone with experience on council to fill that slot.
Councilman Rogers, there is an opening on Human Services Committee.
Well, that's why I was asking, because I couldn't remember who else. So I'm willing to go to Human Services and withdraw from referrals.
Okay, really quickly, Councilmember Harry Karas, your light's on. Is it, you got something?
Oh, it was my previous comment.
Oh, all right.
I'm out. So.
Excellent. Okay, so we will have a Human Services Committee that consists of Isles, Harris, Harris, Burns, and Rogers. And then we will have a Referrals Committee that is Suffredin, Biss, and Nusma. Moving on, City School Liaison, there are 3 spots, and that would be Harris, and Davis. Nobody wants in that didn't. Perfect. That's done. Economic Development. There are 6 spots, and there are Nusma, Burns, Suffredin, Rogers, Isles, Kelly, and Davis. Councilmember Burns isn't here, so we can go forward with the 6 of us that are, unless there's any objection.
Unless we want to limit that to 5 as well.
What's the total composition of that with residents as well?
There are ex officio members as well. City Manager Stowe is about to tell us.
13, 6 that are all 3 are ex officio. Actually 4.
Yeah, we just added another ex officio member last week. So I think it's 14 members, but 5 of them are 4.
Like 3 non-council member members. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay, so go ahead.
Councilmember Burns has been an active member of that committee, and if he were here, I'm sure he would express his desire to remain.
He is, however, not here. So why don't we? I mean, how are we doing tiebreakers? I would say attendance is probably the first, and then seniority, most likely the second. So why don't we skip this one and come back? Does that seem fair? All right. All right, Environment Board. We need 1 council member. Does anybody want to do it?
That had been me at my request, though that membership was changed to add me to the list, to add a council member to the list with me in mind. Yeah, I've told the Environment Board I will continue to join them as a council liaison, but would rather not be officially a member of the board. That will help them with quorum purposes, give me a little bit of flexibility if my kids have a thing that night.
Okay, so we don't need a council member on that. Okay,
Up
so
to us to declare.
if anybody wants in, speak now. If not, why don't we go forward with none? Everyone's good with that? Mayor Biss.
I definitely don't have an opinion on that. I'm just curious from Councilmember Newsom's point. Alex, does it help with quorum if there is the kind of, according to the city code, if the vacancy exists on the environment board? So we can keep the city code as it is with this spot theoretically existing, and as long as it's not full, it still doesn't create a quorum issue.
Thank you, Mayor Biss. Yes, that's correct. It does not count towards quorum if there's a vacancy listed.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're good with just going forward with no council member on that one. That brings us to finance and budget, where we have room for 5 and we have 6. Newsma, Burns, Suffredin, Rogers, Kelly, and Davis. What do we want to do with this? I mean, we do have a full agenda, and the easiest move is to drop the person who's not here. Does anybody object to that? All right, with no objection. Okay, well, go ahead, Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. I'm trying to get in contact with Councilmember Burns to understand which ones are our priority. I'm going to assume he had something that he had to attend to that he couldn't be here. So I'm reaching out to him now for
Okay.
those 2, because we just dropped him, or wanted to drop him from 2. So I'm reaching out.
Okay, Councilmember Kelly.
So I believe he also has like 7 as first choice. So
Well, that's right. I want to know which
Right.
ones are his.
so given that, I mean, it seems to me that that would make sense.
Okay. Why don't we hold off on that one and move on to housing and community development, which has 4 spots and 4 council members who want to participate. So congratulations, Harris, Burns, Rogers, and Isles.
I'll just note really quickly, if I can, that there are also requirements about the wards, and these meet all of those requirements. So we have enough diversity that we need. So you guys self-selected in really well. Nicely done.
All right. So now we need an additional council member for MWDEBE. Councilmember Burns is listed and there's no second. Is there a second council member that's interested in participating in that committee?
So one thing I just want to point out, sorry, about MWDEBE is going, while I put together this form, I was looking at what our code says. It actually doesn't say there should be council members on MWDEBE. It says a liaison from the Economic Development Committee and a liaison from the Housing and Community Development Committee. I'm not sure if those were supposed to be interpreted as council members or not. There are currently, in the last council, there were 3. Our code says 0. The most generous interpretation could be interpreted as 2. So I just want to give you all that information and you can decide what to do with it.
Okay. So we haven't established the Economic Development Committee yet. Seems like we should go back to that, but why don't we finish up what we have here with social services, which has 2 spots, Burns, Harris, and Isles. Is there anybody who wants to drop out on that one? Isles does not want to drop out. Burns is not here. Harris, you don't want to drop out? All right, I'm going to just make a decision as chair that on that one, Isles being present wins, which brings us back to economic development. Have you heard anything, Councilmember Harris? All right. Well, I think with the understanding that, yes, Councilmember Davis.
Okay, I would like to make a motion that, if we cannot presume what Burns wants and we have to do city business, we're 30 minutes into our meeting, he could have zoomed in. And if he's unable to, then we have to make decisions without, we can't assume that he wants to be on any commission. I think that for the ones that he's interested in, if there are competing members who are here, we should just give them the spots.
Okay. I think that,
And that is the motion I'm making.
all right.
There.
Councilmember Isles.
It sounds like last council, Burns was very active in economic development. So since I'm on the social or the other committee, the social services committee, I'll remove my name from economic development so that Burns can serve on that.
Okay. So that gives us 6, Nusma, Burns, Suffredin, Rogers, Kelly, and Davis for economic development. That brings us to finance and budget, where we need 5. No, Councilmember Harris.
Councilmember Burns is trying to call in right now.
And can I second the motion? I think there was a motion made by.
Yes. So could you repeat the motion?
My motion is that, okay. Now, if he's going to call in, I'll say that if he's not here within the next 2 minutes, we have to vote or make our decisions based on the people who are here. And I assume that the people who are here are going to pick themselves for their commission assignments. So I think we're going to have to go forward where if there is a spot and Burns would like a commission assignment, or he indicated it, but he's not here to, vouch for it, then he will have to cede the spot to the people who are here.
Okay.
And that is the motion that I'm making.
Okay. And that's a motion that you're seconding, Councilmember Kelly. Is there any discussion? All right.
Do we know his full name?
Okay. All right. So there's a motion that's been moved and seconded. We're going to have to vote on that motion. So we can get a roll call on that.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Yeah.
Okay. So the thing that we have to do now is vote to allow remote participation for Councilmember Burns. Councilmember Nusma.
I will make that motion to allow Councilmember Burns to participate remotely.
Second.
Okay.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Isles?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
Right.
Councilmember Suffredin?
Aye.
Mayor Riss?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Harakaris?
Aye.
All right. Please add Councilmember Burns to the roll. All right. So where we are now is with finance and budget. There are 5 spots and 6 people seeking to be on the committee. Is there anybody who wishes to withdraw their name? All right. So that leaves us with what is a tiebreaker? Seniority? How do you want to do this? We haven't adopted a rule on this. Councilmember Kelly.
So I do think if there is, our council members here that are looking at the total number of committees they're serving on, maybe that should be considered.
Okay. Have you
Just
been
as a thought, as a way to proceed,
keeping track of who is on how many committees?
as, their first choices here.
Okay. Does anybody else want to use that as the tie-breaking metric, or is there another way that you think is fair?
Yeah, I agree. I was thinking the same thing.
Okay. Stand at ease while it's tallied up.
Yeah, to be clear, everybody got their first choice because the standing committees were ranked. The other committees weren't ranked. So there's no first choice, second choice for those.
I've got a question while we're waiting. Did we do economic development when I stepped out? Oh, okay, thank you.
For social services, is that Harris and Isles, or is Burns on that one? That's Harris and Isles, right? Yeah, so Burns is not on that one.
Can I have the floor?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Burns, can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay, so there's decisions being made that I need you to catch up on quickly. We have more than the recommended or the allotted number of council members. So if you have a choice where you'd like to step down, that would be very helpful for us so we don't have to keep counting and tallying. So finance and budget, economic development are the two that we have over.
I thought economic development had been
Oh, economic got
decided.
cleared up?
It's really just finance.
You did. Okay. So budget and finance.
Okay, so, I'll just take over. Councilmember Burns, here's the situation. We're using number of committees as the tiebreaker. You are currently listed as being on 5 committees. And of the other people who wish to be on finance and budget, the next, there's 4. Perry Davis is on 4. Jonathan's on 3. I'm on 3. And Matt's on 3. So
I should be on 4.
you
I should be on 4 as well. Planning and development, human services, because I stepped into human services, economic development, and HCDC.
Could you read those again?
Okay, so Matt is on 4. Councilmember Burns, is there a committee you wish to get off to get on finance and budget, or are you willing to withdraw your name from finance and budget?
It depends. I know we had to re-refer things, but we were literally the zero-based budgeting. We already decided to go out on an RFP for that. I believe that's going to council. I would just want to confirm that. And if it's going to council already, then I'm happy to step down from finance.
Does anybody have an answer on that?
Yeah, Councilmember Burns. So your question is whether or not it's en route to City Council. Is that right?
We voted to go out for an RFP. The Finance and Budget Committee voted to go out for an RFP for zero-based budgeting, and then that will go to council. And I'm saying, is that still the case? Because that's what we voted to do.
Yes, that's my understanding as well.
Okay. All right. Then I'm cool stepping down from finance. I would like to be on economic development. I was the last chair. I didn't complete my term. And Paul, literally, we've been working on a lot of big initiatives on economic development. So I would appreciate being able to continue to serve on economic development.
Okay. I think that you are on economic development, but you are withdrawing your name from finance and budget. So that committee will be Newsoma, Sufferton, Rogers, Kelly, and Davis. That's consistent with your wishes, Councilmember Burns?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So I believe we have gone through all the committees and they're all populated with the appropriate amount of people. Is there anybody dissatisfied or have any comments? Why don't we run through it?
All right, let's make sure I got it right. This is being recorded, but still. For APW, I have Newsma, Harris, Burns, Sufferton, and Davis. For Planning and Development, I have Harris, Burns, Rogers, Kelly, and Davis. For Human Services, I have Isles, Harris, Burns, and Rogers. For Referrals, I have the Mayor, Sufferton, and Newsma. For City School Liaison, I have Harris, and Davis. For Economic Development, I have Newsma, Burns, Sufferton, Rogers, Kelly, and Davis. I have no one for the Environment Board at the moment. For Finance and Budget, Newsma, Sufferton, Rogers, Kelly, and Davis. HCDC, Burns, Rogers, and Isles. MWD, EBE, I think we need to take another look at, is maybe a separate discussion. And then social services is Harris and Isles.
All right. Congratulations, everybody. Yay.
Wait, I'm sorry, MWEDBE, we had just Burns, or we left that one open?
Well, this was the one where our code says that we're not supposed, it doesn't say the number of council members. It just says liaisons from Economic Development, HCDC. I think there's already a person who's serving as the Economic Development liaison, who's one of the, like a citizen, a resident, not a council member. So however you all want to interpret that as.
All right.
So just to be clear for Councilmember Burns, who is on line, Councilmember Burns, you're the only one who indicated a desire to serve on the MWD EBE committee, but we're saying we don't need any council members on that committee.
I mean, there's always been a council member, and it absolutely needs one for reasons that should be obvious. I mean, a lot of our committees have issues keeping a quorum. We've always had a chair, a council member chair on that committee. I think that's more of an oversight than anything else. So are we saying we need to update our rules or code, or what do we need to do?
Yes, if you believe that that's been an oversight, then yeah, we would need to change our ordinance.
Which is awesome because we're going to do our rules tonight. So we have an opportunity to address it. But right now you are the sole council member on MBW, or you're on that committee. Mayor Biss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that we're down a little institutional knowledge as of last Monday, but I'm wondering maybe Alex, like, it's totally allowable, I think, for the mayor to make an appointment of a person who happens to be a council member to a BCC. Do we know if that's how council members migrated onto MWD-EBE initially?
That I do not know, but I wonder if they were acting as the liaisons from the other committees that Ms. Lepsiger spoke about. So I believe Councilmember Burns is going to be on the Economic Development Committee, so he could serve as the liaison that's required by code.
Yeah, and I've like if we're just sort of solving a temporary problem while we fix the code, I'm happy. I think we have vacancies over there. I'm happy to appoint a council member or two if while we're waiting for the code to catch up with our intent. Assuming I'm right that we have vacancies, which I think is true, but it's
Yes, I believe there are vacancies.
Okay. So we're good moving on to the assignment of temporary chairs for the standing committees. This item has no instructions. So why don't we do this? And these are for the temporary chairs for the purpose of the first meeting, correct? Councilmember Rogers.
Do we need to vote on the R1 motion?
Okay. So, all right. Got a little ahead of myself. Let's crank out this thing. There's a motion. Second. Let's vote.
Who was the mover and seconder? Perfect. Okay.
Do you want to do another motion and second because now there?
Okay.
I will remove. I will move again. The appointment of the council members to the committees as
Second.
discussed.
Second.
Great. Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Isles.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns. Councilmember Suffredin.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers.
Aye.
Councilmember Heracarius.
Aye.
Mayor Biss.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
I said aye already.
All right. So on a 10-0 vote, The composition of the committees for the 82nd Evanston City Council have been approved. All right. So now we need to assign temporary chairs for the standing committees for the first meeting. May I suggest that we do it by, this is just for the first meeting and for organization, Councilmember Harikars.
Thank you, Chair Suffredin. I think you're going probably the same direction I was thinking, but I think we should go by seniority for the first meeting. Unless you,
I was going to suggest seniority with alphabetical order as the tiebreaker.
Sure.
If that works for everybody. Middle. No, let's go alphabetical order by last name. This is again for the first meeting, at which point the actual chair rotation will be decided. So there's no power grab or excitement. So that will be for Administration Public Works, Tom Suffredin. For Planning and Development, that will be Bobby Burns. For Human Services, Bobby Burns. All right. Although, you know, that is something that we've had an issue with where we don't want people as multiple chairs. So we'll make that one Juan Harikaris. For referrals, it'll be the mayor. For economic development, it will be Claire Kelly. Finance and budget, Jonathan Newsma. And okay, then never mind. You have been demoted. HCDC. HCDC would be Matt Rogers or Sean Isles. Sean Isles. Sorry, Matt Rogers. Okay. All right. So, everybody good with all those? Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so for APW, we have Councilmember Suffredin. For P&D, we have Councilmember Burns. For Human Services, we have Councilmember Harikaris. For referrals, Mayor Biss. City School Liaison doesn't have a chair. Economic Development, Councilmember Kelly. Although I want to acknowledge that Councilmember Burns said something about his chair not being over, so I don't know what that term is, like how long that term is. For Finance and Budget, they don't have a councilmember chair. For HCDC, Councilmember Isles, and Social Services also doesn't have a councilmember chair.
Okay. We good with a roll call vote to approve that?
And I have one question, Chair.
Yeah.
How are we selecting the long-term chairs? Because I know for some of these, I think the mayor makes the appointment. At least that's what it says in the code. But how are we handling that?
I think that's a decision for each committee at their first meeting. Does that sound right? I mean, I guess.
So for standing committees, typically staff has just given a schedule. One thing that hopefully you'll all discuss and not decide tonight, but discuss will be how long the chairs shall be. So in the past, we've done 3 months at a time. There have been proposals to do a whole year. There have been proposals to do just 6 months. You will all eventually decide what that is. For the non-standing committees, you're right that they all have different ways. Our code and our rules say different things about how they're all determined. So staff will get all of that cleared up. And then for most of the ones that I'm looking at, I believe the committees themselves choose their chairs.
Does that answer your question, Councilmember Burns?
the HCDC, for example, is appointed by the mayor. So as long as y'all get on the same page about how to make those appointments, we're all good. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Nusma. Was that old?
That was an all.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Mayor Biss.
Sorry, and I thank you, Councilmember Burns, for raising this because it's very confusing, and I really hesitant to like start appointing chairs unless I'm absolutely sure that's my authority. So HCDC reports to Human Services, correct? So according to Rule 5.6.3, committees consisting of council members and residents which report to standing committees, so that's HCDC, shall have a resident chair elected by the members of the committee. Got it. Okay, so Rule 5.6.2. Committees consisting of council members and citizens which report directly to the council, HCDC, shall have a council member as chair appointed by the Rules Committee for a term determined by the Rules Committee. So that's on us as a body, not on me personally. At least according to the rules. Maybe the code says the opposite, which would not be shocking.
Yeah, I think the code says something different, but I like Allison's idea to just get clear on all this and then make a decision.
All right, Councilmember Nusma.
As I recall from 4 years ago, somebody on staff took all this information back and made a matrix and figured out who slotted in where, and whether it was a standing committee or one of the other committees where the mayor appoints a chair, it was all kind of considered holistically, and it came back to Rules Committee for ratification.
We were planning on doing something like that, but we didn't know who was going to end up on which committee, so it was hard to propose something.
Yeah, so I think what would make sense to me is if staff then did this exercise and then perhaps we convene a Rules Committee meeting, for a few minutes prior to our next council meeting to validate the staff chairmanship assignments.
Okay. So we still need to vote on the assignment of temporary chairs for standing committees.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Isles?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Suffredin?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis? Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Mayor Biss?
Aye.
On a 9-0 vote, the temporary chairs to standing committees assignments have been approved. Do I have a motion on adoption of the 25-29 Mayor Pro Tem schedule for the 82nd City Council?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Harry Karas, seconded by Councilmember Harris. Is there any discussion? Fantastic. Let's vote.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris? Councilmember Isles?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns? I think he said aye. Councilmember Suffredin? Aye. Oh, there he goes. Okay.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis? Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Mayor Biss?
Aye.
9-0.
All right, 9-0 vote. The Mayor Pro Tem schedule for the 82nd City Council has been approved. Do I have a motion on R4, which is a discussion item about the city manager evaluation timeline?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Harris, seconded by Councilmember Nusma. Any discussion? It's a discussion item, so we need to talk. Councilmember Nusma, followed by Councilmember Harry Karas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it would better serve the citizens of Evanston and our city staff if we were more deliberate in our, had more structure behind the city council's relationship with the city manager. Last council, it took the council 2.5 years into our term to even decide for ourselves what our goals were. And to our discredit, we were not explicit at all about what our expectations were of the city manager with regards to those goals and any other kind of unwritten objectives as well. So I would like to get in a groove where the council adopts goals, is close to the beginning of our term as possible. We turn those into some work order, work plan in collaboration with the city manager that gives us something that we can measure the city's performance against, and then review our progress against that work plan on a quarterly basis. And that will set us up for a once-a-year annual review, which I would recommend come during budget cycle, so we can consider the city manager's salary at that time and put it in place for the next budget year. So, quarterly review, documented work plan based on city council goals is what I think we should be putting in place.
Right. Councilmember Harry Cars.
Thank you, Chair. I think we need to set the actual firm date in the calendar when we're going to have the final review with City Manager Stowe. I think it'd also be helpful. I do agree with Councilmember Newsma that we need quarterly check-ins to gauge the progress according to the work plan. But I'd almost I'd say we should also have a 6-month check-in. I know that's kind of best practice if you're doing like a yearly review to have a midterm check-in. So I think it's important. I think if we have these dates on the calendar, it won't be as daunting and as last minute as it has been in the past.
Okay, is there anybody else before I jump in? All right, so I presume we're using May 1st as the start of the year? Or okay, here, let me throw out. All right, so council was sworn in April 28th, so we'll use May 1st. If we're doing quarterly, that would put us at August 1st-ish for the first quarterly check-in. November 1st for the second quarterly, which is also the 6-month one. And that's right in the heart of budget time. So if we're talking about a compensation review, that's the time to do it. Although it's an incomplete, give me something. Like,
I don't think we need to be beholden to May 1st. In fact, it might be better to kind of shift it in such a way where the review doesn't coincide with the next election cycle 4 years from now. It's either a little bit significantly before or a little bit after. Let me put it the other way around. A little bit before or significantly after.
Okay, so if we went with a January 1st concept, the first quarter would have been like we would be June 1st would be like our true second quarter of this year. For our new colleagues, do you feel like that's enough time to have a meaningful sample size to, I mean, I think that's another part of this is we don't want to have kind of a 6-3 split in terms of sample size. And Luke, if you got any thoughts on it too, I mean, feel free.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think one of the challenges is my anniversary date is August 16th. So how do we try to get back to like hitting the anniversary date? The other question is I'm happy to provide a quarterly report come August or whatever timeframe we consider. I think it's difficult to do the work plan until we have council goals ratified. So I think within 30 days of council goals being ratified, we can produce a work plan and then start producing quarterly updates based on that work plan. But until we have official council goals, it's difficult to do that work plan.
Okay. Councilmember Rogers.
I mean, I'm fine with that. I was going to suggest that we do the end of a typical quarter, a March 30, end of March, end of June, end of September, because that gives us time at an end of September review to plan for the budget for the upcoming year.
Okay. I guess to City Manager Stowe's point and kind of to the overall point, when do we anticipate adoption of city goals? I'm good to do that as soon as possible. What does anybody have Councilmember Rogers.
I think that dovetails into a June 30th adoption of goals.
Mayor Biss.
Yeah, I mean, Luke, can you speak to what's planned for June 9th and whether that would, because I think what we're hearing up here, certainly which I share strongly, is we don't want to do a very, very long, involved, painful goal setting process. I think we did that very recently. Obviously, we have new people here, but I don't know that we have dramatically new directions. And so I think all of us, it sounds like, hope that we could do a goal setting very quickly, not allow us to get bogged down by it. So how does that overlap with what's envisioned for June 9th? And is that something we could do on June 9th?
Yeah, thank
If
you.
not the vote, then the discussion that would then tee up a June 23rd vote.
That's exactly right. And that was the goal and the hope of having Brad Cole from IML come to the first meeting in June. We were planning to start earlier in the afternoon on that first Monday, June meeting in an effort to essentially tee up council goals with the hope that we could potentially get it done by the end of June.
Okay, so let's say we nailed that. The appropriate interval for the first quarterly check-in would be what? September? Sooner? I mean, the city's still rolling.
Like October 1, right?
Okay.
First, yeah. I like what Councilmember Rogers was suggesting. We just coincide it, towards the end of the calendar quarter. So we hit the date in June. Next one is towards the end of September. December, we're getting into the holidays at the end of December. So the December one kind of nudges up a little bit earlier on the calendar, but so be it.
So we're looking at what, like 10-1 is the first one, 12, 15.
Second meeting in September.
Okay. So
Just to throw out a date, what date would that be?
September, December.
Second meeting in September would be
March.
September 22nd. Right.
July. That gets us to July for the annual.
Well, we've got 4. Like, they're half of 4 is 2. So we don't do quarterly meetings and then a separate, annual review. One of the quarterly meetings is the annual review.
Right. That's what I'm saying. July
One
would
of the
be
quarterly ones is the biannual.
right. So July would be the real deal, big one.
And that puts us
June.
close to what the city manager said.
Yeah.
You said August is your start
Correct,
date,
August 16th.
So that puts us close to an August 16 for the annual review to hit right before that or right around that time.
Okay. So we're talking.
But you're saying July? Where did July come?
Oh, well, I was going 3 months after March,
Would be June. End of June.
April, May, June. You're right.
Yeah.
All right. But you want to get to August eventually? I mean,
Yeah, I don't think we have to hit August 16th on the head, but I think we're just
Yeah.
trying to work our way back
I
to
mean-
closer to the anniversary date.
I mean, I would say this just like regular calendar quarters, I agree with Councilmember Rogers. It sets us up well to make a decision that if we make the big one be the third quarter one that happens in late September, then we're making a decision that aligns with our budget year. And I guess I'm not wedded to the idea that we have to sort of have like a city holiday in perpetuity on August 16th. Like I think, we like the truth of the matter to Councilmember Newsma's, I think, tough but fair opening comments is we kind of have not been particularly diligent about doing things on that anniversary at all. For example, we did on April 28th, which was, literally more than half a year late. So I think if we kind of eventually make it back to the second half of September, yeah, it's not quite August 16th, but it's a more logical date. I think compared to how we've been, it's certainly close enough in my view.
okay. So this is the proposed timeline is September, December, March, June. That's what we're all good with. And then And this discussion item is just about the timeline. The content would be.
So the mid one would, the September one would be the annual one, right? The September one would be the big annual one. Which means the March would be the 6 month, and the other two would be the quarterly check-ins.
And the initial June one would sort of be like a warming up for this by establishing the goals, giving Luke the tools to make a work plan that's downstream of those goals, and then preparing for like a serious, what will be the first annual evaluation in September.
Right. And so his evaluation in September of this year would come only 5 months after his previous annual review, but it gets us back on track.
Okay. Is that timeline agreeable to everybody? All right. Well, it has been discussed. All right. So that brings us to the headliner, City Council Rules Draft, item R5. This is also for discussion. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move discussion of the City Council rules.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Nuswa, second by Councilmember Harris. I think we have a presentation, and then we can get into the discussion after that. Before you start, Liza, I just want to check in with everybody. My plan was to go through this in order and have people weigh in section by section. Is there any objection to that? And is it? I know you got your presentation. We spoke earlier. Does that line up with your presentation and your?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
I want to start with some general comments, but then section by section makes sense.
Yeah, I can give some kind of initial context to set the stage. Good evening, Chair Suffredin, members of the Rules Committee, City Manager Stowe, Clerk Leipziger. I'm Liza Robertson-Young, Chief Legislative Policy Advisor. And yes, as I just said, to set the stage a little bit for this conversation, first, this is a discussion item for tonight. This is not an item for action. This is just intended to begin a conversation that ultimately the council as policymakers will provide direction on. So to start that conversation, first I want to explain why we're evaluating our rules. For those of you who have spent time trying to decipher the current rules, you're probably all too well aware that they're somewhat challenging to read and hard to make sense of. Just to give one example, the current rules are arranged alphabetically instead of in a substantive or procedural order. So literally rule number 1 is adjournment, which of course is the very last thing that happens in a council meeting. This organizational structure makes it pretty challenging to resolve questions of procedure on the fly. And I think it creates confusion for members of the public who are trying to understand what council is doing and why. So there are 3 overarching goals for the draft that's before you tonight. First and most significantly, the draft aims to reorganize our current rules in a way that makes substantive and procedural sense. It makes it easier to find relevant provisions when there are parliamentary questions that arise in the middle of council meetings. And this is the bulk of the changes in the draft. This aspect of the draft is intended only to make our current rules legible and understandable, not to make significant changes. The second goal of this draft is to clean up inconsistencies within the rules and between the rules and the city code. As has already come up tonight, there are some places where our rules and the code are in conflict with each other. So the goal is to address those inconsistencies and clean it up. And then third, the draft makes some substantive changes that are aimed at making our current practices run more smoothly, particularly around parliamentary issues like how motions are made. Many, if not most of these changes are modeled on city rules from other municipalities that we've looked at both in Illinois and in similar communities around the country. So that's what the draft in front of you is trying to do. I really appreciate the incredibly thoughtful and productive feedback we've already received from council on how to revise this draft or identify areas for decision moving forward, and look forward to working to incorporate those recommendations. So maybe now we can turn to walking through the draft. I'm just going to identify places where there are substantive changes, but as we move through the document, there are other places people want to stop and discuss, please feel free. I think you all have paper copies of the new draft and the current rules in front of you, and Allison has graciously agreed to scroll through the document on the screen as we walk through the changes.
So just really quickly, you can see these are our current rules. It has the date July 26th, 2021. That is not the last time they were updated. We've made rules changes since then, but basically this is the old one. And then the new one has just the table of contents. It says draft at the top, and I've got both up here if we need, but right now I'll scroll through these.
If I could, sorry. If I could ask a question, is the December 12th, 2022 the most recent version of printed?
That is the most recent complete version of the rules. One issue that we've run into in updating them is that council has voted on some rules changes that were never actually incorporated into the document
because
that's
the
available.
copy I have, which is different than the one that was here. So I just want to clarify. Thank you.
Okay, great. Does anyone else have comments that they'd like to make at the outset?
Yes, please. Sorry. Light on. Chair. Thank you. In reading through the draft rules and actually the current rules as well, there are a few city council rules that conflict with city code. So I've made a note of that and shared at least some of that with you already. So we're going to need to fix one or the other. Also, I want to make sure it's written down somewhere what takes precedence. We've got city council rules, we've got city code, we've got Robert's rules, we've got state law. I assume it's written down somewhere that if there is a conflict between one of these documents, which one takes precedence.
Yeah, the rules explicitly say that they take precedence over Robert's rules. Law would control over the rules. And I think one of the goals with this draft is to put together a set of rules that the council agrees on, and then we can consider whether there are code changes that we need to make by adopting an ordinance.
Great, thank you.
But the goal is to make sure that they're consistent. Okay, great. Let's start out with the definitions section. This is section 1, beginning on page 6. So this section is significantly expanded from our current rules, which leave many terms undefined. The goal of this section is just to provide increased clarity for council and the public on how we're using specific words and what these terms mean in the context of our legislative processes. I think we're trying to define as many terms as carefully as we can throughout the document. So if there are additional definitions people would like to see here, we can certainly add them, but that's the overarching goal for this section. Okay, moving ahead to duties and powers. So let's start in section 2, page 7. So much of this is taken from our current rules. There are a few key changes I want to highlight, however. First, Rule 2A4A on page 8. This is on mayoral voting, and I think there's been a little bit of confusion about this rule. So this is really just intended to correct an omission in our current rules, which require 5 votes to pass most ordinances unless there's a special supermajority requirement. The current rules don't say what happens if there's a 4-3 vote, in which case there aren't the necessary 5 votes to pass something. So this is just a change to clarify what happens in that situation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is one instance where city code does have something to say. And so the rule as it's currently drafted in the new set of rules is consistent with city code 1632. I think this makes sense because it allows progress to be made when a full quorum isn't present. Or the full membership isn't present. And we have had instances in the past council where one council member had to recuse themselves and another council member was not present at the meeting. And since an ordinance needs 5 votes to pass, we didn't want to let progress grind to a halt. So this meeting does make sense. It also allows or would prevent a single council member from impeding progress by just absenting themselves from the dais, during a vote or during a meeting. So I think this does make sense. It allows the mayor to kind of break a non-tie. If that council member were present and voted no, it would create a 4-4 tie, and the mayor would very clearly be allowed to break that tie. So this this rule, I stumbled on this at first, but upon further reflection, it does make sense.
Councilmember Rogers.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a question about this one. So previous rules always stated the mayor did not have a vote at all if in this type of a situation, except for breaking a tie or things that required a supermajority involving the mayor. In the case that a 4-3 vote were to occur, the motion would just fail, would it not?
Yes, that would be what happens
Okay.
under our current rules.
And if the mayor were to vote in a case where 4 and less than 4 were four negative votes were recorded on the record, and it was say a 4-2 vote, and the mayor were to vote 4-3, you end up with the exact same situation, do you not?
Where there would be 4 votes on one side and 2 votes
So
on the
if
other.
it has 4 affirmative votes and fewer than 4 negative votes,
Mhm.
so if it were a 4-2 vote, and the mayor were to vote negative in that situation, don't we end up with the exact same 4-3 that we're trying to avoid? That's a question, so feel free to.
Yeah, Mayor Biss.
I don't know that we're trying to avoid a 4-3. To my thinking, we're trying to avoid the following really weird reality that we have now, which is that I break 4-4 ties, but if something is 4 yes and 3 no, it's just dead. So like you would think 4-4 is a less supported thing than a 4-3, but if it's 4-3, it's dead, where if it's 4-3, I can break the tie and pass it. That just seems odd to me.
Councilmember Rogers, are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Davis.
I was going to say I agree it's odd, and I think we should get rid of the 4-4 tie-breaking rule as well to be consistent.
Okay, so that's a proposed new rule. That's not here. Councilmember Rogers.
So just to kind of help us move through this process, maybe, I think that what we should probably be doing is discussing things, but then making our notes, turning our notes over to staff and asking staff to look through those notes. And if they see, for example, 6 people up here say the exact same thing on any issue, not necessarily even talking about this issue, that then we kind of know where we're going, rather than having a bunch of just back and forth right now. So I guess I'm making a proposal, not a motion as such.
Old Chair Rogers.
Old Chair Rogers here.
Why don't we do this, if this works for everybody? Let's let Liza go through her presentation. Everyone put asterisks, stars, whatever, next to things that you want to go back to. I assume your presentation isn't so long that people will forget. And we
Hopefully
can do
not.
that. So why don't we do that? Why don't we just let Liza go? And then we'll have the discussion after.
That,
Cool with everyone?
that works.
Okay.
And just you're anticipating something that I wanted to check with the committee on, which is what the best process would be going forward. And my suggestion would be that this is put in a Google Doc with the major substantive changes in red text for all of you to add comments and line edits to, and then staff would review that feedback and organize it for the next discussion.
Individual Google Docs.
Yes. Okay. So moving ahead, the next substantive change is Rule 2F on page 10. And this rule change is just to add some clarity around conflicts of interest. Currently, our rules only identify financial conflicts as a conflict of interest. This is inconsistent with our ethics code and most other similar municipalities. So this draft clarifies that a personal, family, client, or economic interest may create a conflict. It also allows the council to determine whether a member has a conflict in cases where it's unclear if the conflict exists, and provides that a member with a conflict shall recuse themselves and shall not be counted as part of a quorum on that matter. The next change is Rule 2G on page 11. And this section is intended to provide some clarity around elected officials' communications with staff, really just to ensure that the city manager and deputy city managers are looped in on communications with staff to improve efficiency in staff responses and to make sure city leadership has awareness of these requests and can make sure they're being handled appropriately. Moving on to the next big chunk, which is meetings. This is section 3. This section is also largely taken from our existing rules. One provision I did want to highlight is Rule 3B on page 12. This section is on the time of meetings. It provides that council meetings shall conclude by 11 p.m. unless the council moves to continue the meeting. And the goal here is just to improve efficient use of time and to ensure that if a meeting runs late, it's clear what agenda items are going to be discussed. This is borrowed from a similar provision in Oak Park's rules. Moving on to section 4, agenda. Much of this section is new, although it's not necessarily a change from our current practice. The goal here is to be really transparent about how items get on an agenda, under what circumstances can the agenda be changed, when is the packet made available, and what the agenda order of business is. So there are a few things to highlight here. First, in Rule 4B on page 14, the draft clarifies that there are a few different ways something can be placed on the agenda: through the referrals process, by a majority of the council that wants to place a special order of business on the agenda, by the mayor, or in the case of administrative or non-legislative items, by the city manager. Second, sections 4B and C provide that the agenda in the packet must be posted no later than 48 hours before a council meeting. This is the time limit set by the Open Meetings Act. And it clarifies that technical corrections, supporting documents, or new items for discussion only can be added to the agenda after that time, but no substantive alterations or new items for action can be added after the 48-hour period closes. And then third, section 4D on page 15. This section adds a new order of business. Looking at other municipalities, most of them have both a consent agenda and a regular agenda, or an agenda section consisting of items that will require some discussion or debate. So we've added a new order of business called items for consideration, which is where those items that require discussion will be placed, as well as items that are removed from the consent agenda, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. Moving on to section 5, conduct of meeting. This section is intended to explain what happens during a council meeting. Much of it, again, is from the current rules, just restructured. But a couple of things to note, starting with the public comment section in section 5E on page 17. This section adds a provision that disabled persons shall have priority seating, something that's not in our current rules. It clarifies that speakers may not cede time to another speaker. And it provides that anyone who wants to use audio-visual equipment during public comment should provide advance notice to the city manager's office by 10 a.m. on the day of the meeting to ensure that we're providing whatever equipment is required. Moving on to the consent agenda, this is section 5H on page 19. This section is somewhat new. It provides that the mayor or a council member may remove any item from the consent agenda within 24 hours of a council meeting, and that a request to remove something from the consent agenda during a meeting or within the 24 hours preceding the meeting requires a second. And so this is just to give everyone, both council and staff and the public, some advance notice of what items require discussion, what staff should be present to support that discussion, and items that are removed from the consent agenda in advance will be moved to the new order of business items for consideration. Okay, moving ahead to parliamentary procedure. This is section 6. Much of this is new, and this is where some of the significant changes are. So,
Can I just interject? I think 4C is also a new part of this items for consideration concept.
Department directors and managers part? Yeah.
Oh, yes, just a provision clarifying that if staff are not aware in advance that there will be a discussion item that requires their attendance and their participation, the relevant staff may not be able to be there. Okay, parliamentary procedure. Section 6A on page 21 clarifies that the mayor or presiding officer makes parliamentary rulings in consultation with the Corporation Council, who serves as parliamentarian. That's our current practice essentially, but this is formalizing it. Rule 6B on page 22 clarifies what items council can consider. And the significant change here is that this provision would mean that everything council votes on is put in the form of a resolution or an ordinance, including, for instance, city contracts that council approves. Those would be put forward in the form of a resolution. And this is consistent with the practices in most other similar communities. Fourth, Rule 6C on page 22 is explicit about the actions council can take on an ordinance or a resolution. So that would be introduction, action, and action, discussion, or accept and place on file in the case of a report being presented to council. Fifth, Rule 6D on page 22. This adds a new section on motions that identifies what motions are in order and when, says whether they're debatable or amendable. Staff is also preparing an appendix to the rules that will consist of a chart or a cheat sheet for motions that can serve as a quick reference and will just be a table saying when a motion's in order, what the vote required is, whether it's amendable, whether it's debatable, whether it's renewable, and that can be a quick reference during council meetings. There are some motions that we have already received requests to add to this list, like a motion to hold. So if there are things that you would like to see added here, that's certainly something we can discuss. Sixth, Rule 6E on page 26 clarifies when a point of order or a point of personal privilege is appropriate and clarifies what those things are. Seventh, Rule 6G on page 27 provides that staff or outside expert presentations during council debate should be limited to 10 minutes unless an advance request is made, just to make the best use of council time. And this section also clarifies that public participation should be during public comment, not during council debate. Moving ahead to Rule 6H on page 37. I think that's supposed to be page 27. That's the wrong page number. It's Rule 6H. This is to provide some new clarity on how and when amendments can be made to ensure that our amendments comply with the Open Meetings Act. So first, this distinguishes between technical and substantive amendments, requires that amendments be reduced to writing before adoption. And then it says that a substantive amendment to an item for final action has to come back at the next council meeting, so it can be posted on the agenda at least 48 hours in advance in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. And then last for this section, section 6IC on page 29 in the section on votes. Currently, our rules say that a 2/3 supermajority vote is required for rules suspension, except a suspension of the rules to allow introduction and action on the same evening, which it requires a unanimous vote currently. This would change all rule suspension, including introduction and action, to a 2/3 supermajority vote. So moving ahead to the last section, committees. This is section 7, beginning on page 29. First, Rule 7B1C on page 30 changes the term for chair of standing committees from 3 months to 6 months to allow more continuity. Rule 7B4 on page 31 clarifies the rules for making temporary appointments. It allows the mayor to temporarily appoint a member of city council to a standing committee or a BCC if another member is unable to attend due to illness or absence. Rule 7C4, this changes the membership of the Planning and Development Committee to 5 members of City Council instead of 7. This is how the committee was structured before this past council, so we're just returning to what our previous practice had been. Rule 7D on page 34 on subcommittees. This section is to be clear about subcommittee membership, reporting structure, what committee does the subcommittee report to, and dissolution. One of the changes here is that subcommittee members are required to be members of the committee that they report to. Rule 7E2 on page 35. This establishes procedures when something is referred to multiple BCCs to ensure that one BCC is identified as the lead committee and takes the leadership role in moving the item forward to council and transmitting recommendations from the BCCs. And then last, Rule 7E7 on page 27. This just clarifies that if an item is stagnant in a committee for 6 months or longer, it will be re-referred to the referrals committee, who can decide what to do with it from there. So that's a quick summary of the major changes, and happy to discuss any other provisions or answer any questions.
Are there any questions? I'll start. So you're going to provide everyone with individual Google Doc links to provide their feedback? Is that what?
That would be my suggestion, but I'm happy to proceed however the committee prefers.
Okay. So there will be an opportunity to give feedback if you're recalcitrant this evening. But Councilmember Nusma.
Ask the same question about procedure. If all we're doing now is saying, okay, thank you for the report, and then we retire to our office and type up our individual feedback on Google Doc, we would reconvene at a later date, and there's not much to talk about tonight. Is that the intention of this meeting tonight? Or do we want to maybe discuss some of the issues where we can get ahead of the game and decide some things sooner rather than later? That's a question for the chair,
Yeah.
for the committee.
Well, I think what we want to do is adopt rules as expeditiously as possible. So let's have a robust discussion this evening, and then the issues that have been raised will be brought to your attention. And then I assume at our next Rules Committee meeting, we will be in a position to have a substantively final document to vote on. Does that sound like what everybody wants to have happen?
Sure.
Councilmember Kelly?
Sure. And if I still have the floor, I can go through my list right now, or I'm happy to.
Do you guys want to? Well, I guess that's a question for everybody. For purposes of discussion, do we want to go through everyone's lists individually, or do we want to use the document and have everybody say their same concerns about particular items? What do you think gets us closer to ultimately having rules to adopt in the near future? Does anybody have a preference, or should we just do individual? Councilmember Kelly.
So I think it would be helpful if we were given a deadline. So this was, we got it last week, like to say, we would like your input by this date, and then compile that input for us all to read over for the next one. I mean, I think we should go over it now. I agree with Councilmember Sufferton to go over it now to discuss many of these items, but I think to provide us with that date and then to give everybody's input so we can really process that information.
Okay, I guess our regular rule schedule is every 2 months. We want to adopt rules before 2 months from now. So why don't we start with what is like our aspirational date for adoption of rules? Does anybody have a opinion?
I think we've already said we're going to reconvene a rules committee immediately prior to our next council meeting to confirm committee chairs. I'm not sure if that's enough time to develop the rules.
I know, so that's a week from today.
That's a week from today.
Yeah.
So that's not going to be.
In 1 month, right?
So a month.
And then maybe give us 2 weeks to give you our information, or a week, or.
Council member feedback to staff on the Google Doc within a week, and then what staff could do is any changes that seem to be straightforward, flag them as such, put them in the new draft. If there are areas that require discussion, you can flag those and maybe include some alternate texts that would allow us to have a productive discussion next time we consider this at Rules Committee.
So May 19th or June 2nd would be a goal, date-wise. Is that, I mean, I want to be optimistic, but it's quite possible that the magic consensus that these Google Docs are intended to create might not happen, and we may need a more focused discussion on some of these items, but
we're sure gonna. Yeah.
Councilmember Rogers.
If I could make a suggestion that we do similarly to what we used to do on Land Use Commission. We now have a document before us that we take a period of time, roughly 2 weeks, for all of us to review these, make suggestions, forward them on to staff, and give staff the opportunity then to take those, review them, figure out what we need to do. Is 2 weeks, do you feel enough? I think that's what not knowing what we're going to throw at you. I don't want to put you on the spot. And then we have a more finalized document where we know where the issues of contention are and where the issues of agreement are. Because if we all agree on something, or 7 of us agree on something, having a big robust discussion on that necessarily isn't productive because it will pass under those 7 votes. And so that's the way typically we would handle that. And I think it gives people an opportunity to be frank with their discussion points, and to figure out where, then staff can figure out where those points of agreement and points of disagreement are, in drafting the next one. And if there's an area that's very gray, then basically it's like, hey, we propose this, we've kind of heard this, let's discuss those points and not spend a bunch of time discussing things that we all agree on.
Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, I agree with that as a practice. You know, I think that could have even happened for this meeting if we gave ourselves direction, but I would like to do that moving forward, because I do think we spend an awful lot of time just kind of vocalizing our position on issues, when that's probably better for a newsletter if we're in agreement on the issue. And we probably need to spend our time, to Councilman Rogers' point, on areas where we don't agree. So I agree with that 100%. Yeah.
And if I may, on the subject of newsletters, there's an inconsistency in the rules and what we were told at orientation about the number of newsletters. So I'd like to flag that as a non-controversial change that needs to be made. All right, so we're all going to work in the next week to get you our suggestions or comments. You will provide some sort of coalesced version of that at our next meeting, right? That'll be the 12th, and then we're aiming for June 2nd for the adoption of the final rules. Does that sound? We're going to do a rules committee. I mean, we're going to do a rules committee about the chairs. Are we all going to get our suggestions to you? You don't have to, all right, maybe you don't have to do anything, but that's our deadline.
Okay.
How's that? Is that okay? Be cool. It's cool. All right. So our deadline will be by next Monday to provide the feedback that you're soliciting. And then, June 2nd will be our and optimistically, we will be approving rules at that point, and we will have a draft document that we've seen with enough time to provide comments. I mean, or we can have a little further discussion about some items in here that I think aren't really particularly controversial, but I don't want us to be here forever. But I mean, there are some things that are like the newsletter issue, or, we could talk openly about the 48-hour packet deadline. Are we comfortable with that? That's the OMA floor, or would we like to explore extending that to 72? But, that's got staff ramifications. Do you want to have discussion about those types of items now, or I'll put them in our little siloed documents and hope that Liza is able to pull it out? Mayor Bess.
I mean, I think we all, we probably have some thoughts in our minds now. And I think if someone has a thing that's like, no, it's not that this is a concern I have that I want to put in writing. This is a thing that I'm myself conflicted on that I want to float for an open discussion, then float it. And that's great. But I think that's sort of up to, it's not, I don't think it's a process question. It's do people have things that they want to talk out right now, or do they just want to enumerate changes and then come back with a sense from staff of where the areas of disagreement are?
If anybody wants to turn on their light and say something, go right ahead. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. I just want to get clarity. So we'd all have our own list that we would compile of things, or would we be able to see each other?
We can't.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Burns.
Yes, I have 2 things that aren't a part of this list, and so I'll bring those up only because they're new. I floated this to council during the first term. Council is the only group up here, council members, who don't have the ability to announce anything at the top of meetings. We go at the end. When there's very few people here, there's some people here. We appreciate you for staying, both online and in person. And so it's obvious why that is that way. There's, 9 of us. And so it's much easier to get to the meeting if you allow the mayor and city manager to speak. I want to speak in prime time when people, are listening. And so I think a way to control, to make sure that that doesn't get out of hand, is just to limit the amount of time we can speak, whether it's a minute, whether it's 30 seconds. I want an opportunity to speak when the meeting is full. And again, everybody but us is allowed an opportunity up here to do that. And I'd like that opportunity. So not a part of this list, but something I wanted to float. And then also beyond standing committees, I'd love for us to consider, Economic Development Committee and maybe a few other committees, the 6 months. 3 months is not enough time. I mean, especially if it's a holiday, you only get 2 meetings. Like you can't get enough done in that time. And so I think the way I'm reading these rules, the 6 months would only apply to standing committees. I'd love for us to take a look at expanding that to other committees as well.
Okay. Anybody else? If not, I would request, and I guess this is a request of the city manager, if we could look into the feasibility of expanding the packet distribution beyond 48 hours. I don't know what an appropriate, if like Wednesday for a Monday meeting is possible. I know that there's a required deadline of when they can actually do it. Well, there's the Open Meetings Act, which requires the 48 hours, which is what we hit, but there's nothing that says we can go beyond that.
We usually produce the packet on Thursday evening, so it's more time than the 48 hours required by state law.
So I guess what I'm saying is it possible to do it on a Wednesday or Tuesday? I don't know how many, and I'm asking like sincerely, like if there are enough things that come in the final 24 hours that's not possible, and that's cool, but.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Chair. I would say that it used to be Fridays. So the packet used to come out on Fridays for Monday night meetings. And there was feedback about Fridays, and I think there were times where it was like Friday afternoon, end of day Friday, which was not enough time. And it was leaving just the weekend and then a frantic Monday. So we moved it up to Thursday nights in an effort to allow all day Friday if there are questions of staff or other issues that come up, then the weekend and then Monday. I think it would probably be pretty difficult to move it up much further. We probably could move it up a little bit earlier in the day on Thursday, but I don't think that Wednesday or earlier is feasible, in my opinion.
Okay. Then that's my answer. Does anybody else have any questions about things that are in here? Councilmember Niesma.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One general concept I want to make sure we have in mind as we're going through these rules is I want to make it clear how policy can be discussed at the council level during the development phase. Rather than the final draft coming to us for introduction that we could, of course, amend. If there's something earlier in the process that for whatever reason needs some discussion at council before a draft can be presented for introduction, I want to make sure we have rules in place that allow us to have that discussion here and have a vote on some points of this policy as it's being developed, short of voting for, introduction or formal action. I could cite a specific example if that would help clarify things. Like I anticipate we might be talking about our comprehensive plan at the city council during a discussion where we will not be asked to vote on it. But I would like to make it clear how this council can provide direction to staff or to a committee, a BCC, which would require a consensus of the committee. In the past, we've kind of done that via a straw poll. I don't think there's anything preventing us from actually taking a roll call vote on a particular item. So I'd like to make sure we have rules in place that would allow such a discussion to happen. bunch of other comments on the rest of the rules, but I think those will go in the Google Doc and we can duke it out at our next Rules Committee meeting.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this item for discussion? Councilmember Burns.
I just wanted I was kind of riding here, and so couldn't emphasize this point, but the ACDC committee, it says in our code, a chairperson is appointed by the mayor from among his city council members, et cetera, et cetera. So for the next, I just want to make sure that we're sticking to the code. If it's in rules, then we can, staff can decide how they want to do it. But if it's in our code, I think it's important that we follow that direction. Thank you.
All right. With no, Councilmember Kelly.
Just one thought that occurred to me right now as we were doing committee selection, and I just would wonder what other council members thought. I relinquished one spot on one of my first choice committees, just so that we could move on with this. Is there any thought about attendance? Like, say somebody rarely ever attended, that a spot could open up, so I could say, okay, I'm just wondering if anybody has thoughts on that in terms of having some attendance rules.
Councilmember Rogers.
So you're going to hear me say a lot on Land Use Commission, we do X, Y, or Z because that's what we used to do. All of our boards and committees that are citizen committees have vacancy things. In the case of a commissioner who was not showing up regularly, I spoke with the mayor and the mayor spoke with that person. They stepped down and someone else stepped into that place. I think if there is a habitual process or a habitual offender, I think that process could work without it necessarily being codified, where if there's an issue, the chair of the committee would go to the mayor and ask them to sit down with the chair and maybe that person and find out if they're really interested in continuing on that committee, if they've lost interest in it, if there's some issue that prevents them from coming. And if so, then it could be resolved that way.
I believe our rules also allow for substitution. So that is a potential solution to the issue that you're talking about. It doesn't get you on the team, but it does get you there, and it allows us to have a quorum in instances where that's important.
If they're continuing to seek a substitution, if they aren't seeking a substitution, I don't know. I'm not familiar if the mayor can just substitute somebody in. I don't know. That's a question.
Not without their consent. So, I mean, if somebody could sort of sabotage by not showing up and withdrawing consent, but that's a pretty sabotagey thing to do.
Yeah. And I think, last council, we had it several times where Administration Public Works did not have a quorum and we just pushed all those items to City Council. And I don't know if there was a downside to that ever, but Councilmember Kelly.
So I think there is a downside. Having these focus groups are really important. It seems to me that having it codified would make it far easier to just implement a policy. So I don't know what those absences should be, but would love some thoughts on that.
So that will be in your Google Doc.
I will put that in my Google
Okay.
Doc.
All right. So is there any further discussion on the draft council rules? Liza, do you feel like you have enough to go with? All right, cool.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So that brings us to the motion for executive session.
Pursuant to 5 Illinois compiled statutes 120/2, I move that the City Council convene into executive session to discuss agenda items regarding security procedures. This agenda item is an accepted subject or permitted subject to be considered in an executive session and is an enumerated exception under the Open Meetings Act as set forth in 5 ILCS 120/2A, Section 8.
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. You may have a roll call.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Isles?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Sufferton?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Harakaris?
Aye.
Mayor Biss?
Aye.
All right. With that, the 10-0 vote We will now move into executive session. And with that, the May 5th meeting of the Rules Committee is adjourned.
Never mind.
We're going to, then we'll be back. It's not adjourned. Do not. Well, in the sense that the meeting is now going to executive session, but we'll adjourn from there.